Imagine for a second the deafening roar of a stadium holding 80,000 screaming fans. Now, imagine all of that sound just completely vanishing. You're inside the helmet. The turf below you is just a hyper-focused blur. The guy across the line of scrimmage is breathing heavily, but you can't hear him at all. All you hear is the erratic, pulsing rhythm of your own heart. This is the isolated, frankly terrifying reality that exists milliseconds before the snap. We all see the collisions, right? The spectacular catches, the physical poetry of the gridiron. But beneath that broadcast layer, there is a completely different, unseen universe. It's a microscopic war of the mind.
So, what breaks a giant? Is it the 300-pound defensive tackle launching himself at your knees? Is it the torn ligament, the fractured bone, the inevitable physical toll of a violently physical game? No. The physical damage, that's expected. It's just accepted as the cost of admission. What breaks a giant is the mind. It's the crushing, suffocating mental tension of knowing that your entire life's work, 2 decades of sacrifice, of sweat, of bleeding for this exact, singular moment, hinges entirely on a single, isolated mistake in front of millions of people.
Section 1. The expectation break.
You know, the expectation is that the National Football League is, at its core, a physical game played by absolute physical anomalies. But honestly, that's an illusion. On one side, sure, you have the physical elite, muscle, speed, raw power, but those are really just the entry tickets to the facility. Every single player who walks through those doors is a physical marvel. But on the other side is the dark reality of mental collapse. It's the unseen, crushing reality of overthinking a route, the paralyzing grip of performance anxiety that literally freezes the limbs of superhumans. There is this razor-thin, almost invisible line between elite, borderline arrogance, confidence, and a sudden paralyzing fear of failure. When every single guy on the field is a freak of nature, the physical just cancels itself out. The only battlefield left is the space between the ears.
Section 2. The psychology of survival.
And this brings us to the agonizing business side of the sport. We have to shift our focus to the front office, where human identity, a player's entire sense of self-worth, is forcibly translated into a cold, terrifying market valuation. Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out the market has decided exactly what your dreams are worth down to the cent. $22.6 million. Let that number hang there for a second. That is the projected market value for free agent wide receiver Jauan Jennings. But you see, a projection is just a ghost on a screen until someone actually pays it. Jennings is a remarkably clutch player, a guy who stepped up and carried his team through a never-ending myriad of injuries. He bled for the Bay Area. But now? The franchise has moved on. They brought in Mike Evans and rookie Dejon Stribling. So Jennings is trapped in this agonizing anxiety of free agency. He's a multimillionaire in theory, trapped in a room staring at a phone that absolutely refuses to ring.
The terrifying silence of the waiting game. Jennings, despite his monumental, game-saving contributions, now faces immense psychological pressure. The market is effectively telling him that his sweat, his repeated injuries, his unwavering loyalty, well, they're simply not worth top dollar. And the silence is deafening. He now faces the very real, ego-bruising possibility of having to accept a heavily discounted role, maybe with the Indianapolis Colts, merely to be a possession receiver opposite Alec Pierce, just to survive in the league, just to keep his jersey. The mental toll of having your loyalty and clutch performances met with absolute, clinical market silence, that's a profound psychological injury that no athletic trainer can ever tape up.
Section 3. Anatomy of the unseen. While the stars deal with the anxiety of millions, there are far darker corners of the roster. To understand the game on this level requires a completely different kind of mind. Welcome to NFL Nexus. If you want to continue this journey into the profound depths of the sport, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment on what you thought. Also, please support the channel by becoming a channel member. Join the few who actually see the unseen.
2 tackles, then 37, then 94, then 136. Now don't look at this as a mere stat sheet, because it's not. This is the literal, agonizing timeline of linebacker Bryce Boucher's growing obsession. This right here is the visual representation of an absolute refusal to be ignored by the machine. From being a literal ghost on the roster in 2022 to leading the Big Ten in 2025. Every single one of those 136 tackles was a violent declaration of existence. It's the story of a man clawing his way out of total obscurity through sheer, unrelenting willpower. Boucher's mental state is just fascinating to dissect. I mean, he was drafted by the Houston Astros back in 2024. He could have chosen professional baseball, a safer, guaranteed, relatively quiet path. Instead, he chose the absolute chaos and violence of the gridiron. He literally abandoned a safe destiny to bleed for a 135th draft spot with the Colts. He arrives in Indianapolis fully knowing he sits behind second-round pick C.J. Allen. He knows his path isn't finding glory on Sunday night television. His path is the special teams crucible under coordinator Brian Mason. He enters the league willingly, accepting that he has to take severe physical and psychological lumps in the darkest, most anonymous phase of the game just to earn the right to put on a helmet. That's not just toughness, folks. That is an elite mental state.
Section 4. The breaking point.
We move now to what might be the most profound, melancholic reality of the sport. The agonizing ego death of a former superstar who is forced to accept his own absolute expendability. This is the haunting descent of tight end Harrison Bryant. Just look at this progression of a fading giant. In 2019, he was at the absolute pinnacle, the Mackey Award winner, definitively the best tight end in college football, drafted 115th overall by the Browns. But then, the slow, merciless fade begins. He's routinely dumped. The Browns let him walk. The Raiders give him a single year, then move on. The Eagles trade him away in a matter of months. The Texans discard him. His championship pedigree just keeps following him out the door, until he finally arrives in Seattle in 2026, not as a weapon, but as a spare tire.
2. I want you to truly process the sheer, suffocating weight of this single, devastating micro-detail. 2 passes caught for 7 total yards in the entire 2025 season with the Houston Texans. Consider the sheer magnitude of that silence for a moment. Imagine being the absolute best in the nation. Picture holding a prestigious, gleaming trophy with your name permanently engraved on it. Validation that you are unparalleled. And then, 6 years later, you spend an entire year of your physical prime producing exactly 7 yards. Imagine the crushing, daily realization of running hundreds upon hundreds of full-speed routes, sweating through grueling 100-degree summer camps, studying endless hours of tape late into the night, only to realize you're nothing more than a decoy, a ghost on the field. You aren't there to catch the ball. You are there to absorb a violent collision so someone else can shine, to be a human shield for the star of the week. That is the true psychological breaking point, the total, agonizing dismantling of the human ego.
Seattle's front office called him a perfect fit, branding the signing as them seeking out hard-nosed tight ends. But we really need to unpack the cold, clinical reality of NFL corporate language here. Hard-nosed is not a compliment about toughness, it's a psychological code. It means a player who has been utterly stripped of all ego, a veteran bought at rock-bottom cost who won't demand snaps, who won't poison the locker room when he's inevitably ignored, and who will quietly accept a practice squad demotion the exact moment someone younger and faster outperforms him. It is the ultimate, finalized designation of expendable insurance.
And here is the claustrophobic present. 2,137 college yards at Florida Atlantic versus 6 total targets in 2025. Bryant is now fighting against 4 other tight ends, A.J. Barner, Elijah Arroyo, Eric Saubert, and Nick Callerup, in offensive coordinator Brian Fleury's brutal, run-heavy scheme. He's fighting for the 53rd roster spot, a spot that could completely vanish on a random Tuesday in August because of a single, slightly missed block in a completely meaningless preseason game. The towering, roaring heights of his past have collapsed into a daily, agonizing fight simply to remain visible.
Section 5. The final whistle.
These microscopic breaking points, they all intertwine. The psychological fragility of Jennings waiting for millions that may never come. The quiet, violent obsession of Botcher, sacrificing his body on special teams merely to validate his existence. And the fading ghost of Harrison Bryant, clinging to a minimum contract, an ego entirely dissolved by the cold calculus of the league. The true battle is not against the man across the line of scrimmage, but against the terrifying silence of irrelevance. The opponent is not the 300-pound tackle. The opponent is the general manager's calculator. The opponent is the phone that doesn't ring. The opponent is the slow, dawning realization that the machine no longer needs you. Because under the brightest lights of the league, the darkest wars are fought entirely within the human mind.
So I'll leave you with this. When the lights fade, who are you without the game?